Whether you're watching this online later in the week or whether you're here in the sanctuary, we want to thank you for being here and making the church part of your plans. So we'll begin with our reading today. Our scripture reading is from 1 Thessalonians chapter 5. It's just verses 12 through 17. And the Apostle Paul is sending some closing wishes to the Christians in Thessalonica. And this is what he says. But we appeal to you, brothers and sisters, to respect those who labor among you and have charge of you in the Lord and to admonish you. In other words, respect your leaders. Esteem them very highly in love because of their work. Be at peace among yourselves. And we urge you, beloved, to admonish the idlers, encourage the faint-hearted, help the weak, and be patient with all of them. See that none of you repays evil for evil, but always seek to do good to one another and to all. Rejoice always and pray without ceasing. Pray without ceasing. Pray without ceasing. Seems like a good place to start. Pray. But what does pray without ceasing mean? I remember when I was in graduate school, I studied, we had a class on early Puritan congregations. And we had the good fortune of being able to read journals and diaries from pastors that were recovered from that era. 350 years ago. And one pastor wrote this in his journal. After the first hour of my pastoral prayer, I noticed some of the congregants shifting in their seats. Let me say that again. After the first hour of my prayer, we haven't gotten to the sermon yet. And first hour of the prayer assumes that there are more hours to come. Of course they're shifting in their seats. And their pews didn't have nice, soft cushions like ours do as well. But is that what pray without ceasing means? Does it mean to have marathon prayer sessions like a monk would in a monastery? A prayer that never ends? Well, speaking of marathons, there is in Japan, outside of the city of Kyoto, on a mountain called Mount Hiei. There is a monastery, a Buddhist monastery. And Buddhist monks, for the last 1,200 years, have been running marathons on this mountain. They're called the Marathon Monks of Mount Hiei. And to be an enlightened Buddhist, you have to run 100 marathons in 100 days. To be a super enlightened Buddhist monk, you run 1,000 marathons in 1,000 days. And just so you know, guys who are older than I am, the last super enlightened monk was 72 when he finished 1,000 marathons in 1,000 days. But here's the thing, these Buddhist monks will run every night from midnight until 7 or 8 in the morning. And while they're running on this mountain in the dark, they will stop 225 times to pray. Is that what pray without ceasing means? Interrupting our day over and over again for little prayers that we offer? I would suggest that the answer to both of those questions is no, not necessarily. Pray without ceasing, I understand it this way. Prayer is, and this is the definition I'd like to use for prayer, prayer is a frame of mind, and it's a frame of heart. It is a lifestyle that we live that opens us to receive God into our lives. Prayer is about stopping throughout the day and the week to give time to God. And prayer is about spending more and more time with God in this way. But prayer is a way of looking at our whole lives and seeing that as opening all of us up to receiving God more fully. Prayer is about you and me in our individual relationship with God, growing closer to God and growing stronger in our knowledge of God, what we know about God, how we experience God's love. That's what prayer is. I want to just introduce a couple of those thoughts today. Prayer is first and foremost about encountering God, experiencing God, meeting God. Now, we say that God is always here. Wherever you are, God is there. Jesus Christ is Emmanuel, God with us. And before he ascended into heaven, he said, I am with you wherever you go, even until the end of the age. So wherever we are, God is already there. The question is, do we see God? And whatever we're experiencing throughout the week, while we're experiencing it, do we recognize that God is there loving us? Prayer helps us open us up, slow us down, so that we see God is here. In a couple of weeks, we're going to talk about answered prayer. And that's a question that came up from church members. Does God answer prayer? Does God answer all prayer? And in some ways, we say yes. God answers every single prayer, in that God is always reaching out to us, always loving us, always sending us a message, always communicating with us. The question is, are we getting the answer? Prayer slows us down and opens us up so that we can receive God more fully. In that sense, prayer is about relationship. Prayer is about relationship. It's about each of our individual relationships and God. Now, any relationship that's going to be a good, healthy relationship has to be a two-way street. I'm sure that you all can think of somebody in your life with whom you're in relationship, a friend or a family member. And if it weren't for you calling them, you'd never get together. You know someone like that? You're always calling them. They're never calling you. And if it wasn't for you taking the effort, you'd never get together. That's called a one-way relationship. And we know from experience how hard those are to maintain. A good relationship is two-way. Well, here's the thing. God always does God's part. God is always loving us. God is always faithful to us. God is always speaking to us. The question is, are we doing our parts? And prayer helps us do our part. Prayer helps us tell God, God, we are committed to you. You know, many times in our lives when things go badly, when we're hurting, we judge God. There's an instinct in all of us to do it. We hold God accountable and we say, God, how could you let this happen? Why? How could you possibly let me down like this? It's much easier for us to do that than to hold ourselves accountable and to look at the ways that we might be letting God down. But prayer, you see, prayer is our way of saying, God, I'm here for you. I'm here ready to enter a relationship with you by opening up and receiving whatever God has to give us. So prayer is about relationship. Prayer then is also about listening. It's about listening. It's just as much what we receive as what we offer. Now, I would say there are three ways that we listen.